All right, welcome everybody to our evolution of bale grazing webinar. Panelists, if you guys want to turn your video on, you can leave yourself mic'd just so everyone can see you. Yeah, I'll do some housekeeping notes just for us to get rolling. All right, so same as our usual webinars. Questions go in the Q&A. We try and get to every question. I know if I don't get to your exact specific question, I've tried to put it with somebody else's just so we can kind of try and save a bit of time. We had quite a few questions come in the sign up. So we wrote down a pile of them. Lots of them were the same. So we're going to ask those right off the hop in question time. So we're going to do this one just a little bit different because all the guys on the panel, they've kind of evolved their systems to something similar. Everyone has something to add, but we're going to keep the presentations somewhat shorter than we have in the past, and then which leaves us more time for questions, because that's what we're finding popular on these webinars is people getting engaged and just a regular old conversation. So as per usual, best question gets a Covers & Co hat, and we want to congratulate our friends here in Clearwater, Manitoba. The Dogs Run Farm, Colin and Katie McInnes, just had a baby boy. So they're doing really well. And so we decided we're going to do a promo of their direct market farm this week. And so one of the questions gets a beautiful bar of soap. And if I can just ask, most people have been on this before. So just if you win a hat, please put your address in the question and answer box, so we don't have to hunt you down after. That was a bit of a mistake on our part. But without further ado, we can roll into it. I'm probably most excited for this panel. We've got an excellent group. Looking forward to the discussion. And so Riley, you're up first. If you want to unmute yourself, tell us about your farm. And as always, I'm going to interrupt and ask questions. So be ready. Have at her.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. We farm in Cartwright, Manitoba, and we are a grass-fed beef operation. So everything we do is involving grass. And I farm with my parents and my wife and 3 kids eventually, maybe as well. So we just try to do as much as we can to mimic nature as we move through our farming enterprise. So that's the nuts and bolts of it, I guess. We've been bale grazing for 15 or 20 years, and have kind of done a whole bunch of different systems, everything from 3 and 4 day moves to 1 week moves, and then back to 5-day moves. And we've started to move into a system now where we are doing 21-day pods. So we actually were at Nerbas's farm maybe 4 years ago or whatever, went out and checked their cow herd and saw what they were doing, and it made a lot of sense to us. And the next year we tried it out, and I was probably in a hockey dressing room telling Joe what a great idea this was, that it worked perfect. We used to fight wires and putting up fences, and now we actually just put everything into a 21-day pod, and we put up like permanent fence posts and then just tear them down again in the spring.
Riley, let me interrupt you there. You brought me into this, so I'm going to make you continue with the story.
Sure. Sorry.
Without taking away anything from Aaron, who I guess taught you and you taught me this, why don't you just talk a little bit about the idea with the 21-day move and a cow being able to adjust her gut pH for, as the ration changes, and just, the balance and feed and trying to, I guess, lower the cycles of feed quality.
Well, yeah, that's great. I'm not going to get quite as technical as you would, or maybe Aaron could. So I'm going to let him fill in some of these gaps maybe later on. But the conversation we had with Aaron at the time made a lot of sense, and it has worked this way as well. We were on shorter spans, and when we were trying to get cows to finish up the feed, that was happening often, right? So every 3 days or 5 days or 7 days, we were making them clean it up. And in this case, that happens less often, and we find that the feed's a lot more consistent, and that's pretty important in our operation. I can talk about it later on maybe, but we keep our calves on our cows for 9 months. So we just weaned last week after this cold spell, so they stay on. So that nutrition is pretty key for them.
Riley, we talked about this before. I think you're the only one of our panelists that are keep the, I guess, wean this late, and talk about your feed quality and kind of what you aim for as far as, keeping the calves on the cow. Do they need a higher quality feed? What the condition is like? Maybe just touch on it a bit if you don't mind.
Sure. We're actually try and keep their feed pretty consistent throughout all winter. So we shoot for bale grazing to start late November, start of December. Until that time, they're feeding on stockpiled forages and things like that. We found that what we were feeding our calves, we just piled into the cows. So they're going through more hay as such, but the calves are staying with their mothers, and then they're learning some of those winter forage techniques, because we keep our heifers, right? Or keeping a lot of them. So we want them to learn from their mothers and stay on as long as possible. We've done different systems, and we found that when we were pulling calves and weaning, and then we weren't as successful. So the calves are coming off in better shape than they have in the past.
So Riley, we've adapted a similar system. That our heifers haven't been on the cows the whole time. We weaned them for a month, and then when the weather was nice in January, we kicked them back out with the cows. And I know something we're struggling with is we want to keep the condition of our heifers good, but they probably need maybe a little bit special care than the cows. So something we're struggling with is like, when have we come up with an amount of residue where we're happy with what they cleaned up without losing too much condition on our open heifers?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the balancing act, I think. We've just, I think it's just a constant work on genetics and making some choices as you go along. We're looking for cattle that excel on this, not just like maintain or do okay on bale grazing, but we're picking cattle, and then we pick bulls that excel. So yeah, we haven't had that struggle. And there's a cow, I guess I can give some props to some people out here. That's came from Taylor Triplet Farm. She was a bred heifer we bought from her. She's 12 years old, right? Never missed. And she's out in a bale grazing. She still has a calf on her at that time when I took that picture. That was maybe, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, I'll say, maybe a month ago, that I took that picture, and she's doing excellent. And those are the types of cows we're picking. So we started that way in picking animals from when we were, building our herd from people that were doing similar things. And then now we've moved to, because we retain our heifers, but we buy our bulls. We bought bulls from Edie Creek. We bought bulls from Nerbas, and we're looking for similar genetics because to complement what's already happening on our farm. So in this type of system, I think it's so important that you're really focusing on your genetics, and that means on both sides. So you're finding those bulls that are going to push your product further, I guess.
Riley, and everybody, if you guys want to prepare an answer in your head, you the same. I know we got a lot of questions about waste, and we're going to touch on it at the end. But how do you know when a cow's cleaned it up enough? Is it quality of feed? Are you looking at their cow patties? Do you want every strand of hay gone? Maybe, and everyone will ask the same question. But what are you looking for before you move a cow to the next 21-day pod?
Sometimes it is quality of feed. There's a lot of factors that I think go into it, and weather is one of them. We moved a herd out just before the cold weather snap, maybe a day and a half early, I would say, maybe a day early. It just so that they were getting like a lot of quality feed when I knew it was going to get to really cold temperatures. So sometimes it's weather, sometimes it's the quality of feed that we got that is left. We usually plan for about a 10% waste. When I do my planning, that's about what we think is going to be on the ground. We usually have bales left over at the end of the year. So our last pod, the strings are never cut. So there's a picture of our my parents' home quarter.
What's going on here, Riley? Why are those in circles? Any bale grazing I've seen is nice straight rows.
Well,
Is
this
is it because you've never grain farmed?
yes, yeah, and I don't have a GPS. No, what we did is we have been bale grazing on our hayland to replenish hayland. So we've been doing that for a number of years. When we went to the pods, we started. We figured that we could cover our hayland every 4 years, and we could do that if we did pods, and then just picked our weakest points in our fields, and then all our hay ground is split up now into about 25-acre fields, just because in the next year we'll hit our bale grazing with some high density grazing the next year, right? So that's kind of the rotation that we work through. But we pick the weakest points of those hay fields, not just cover the whole thing, and not just do strips or squares or chunks, and then only get a certain amount of the field covered.
What do you think you're covering in a year in acres?
In acres?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe like real acres.
Well, I know it's kind of tough because it's like between the bales, are we counting that too, or are we just taking the?
I would say you'd have to, right? But I don't know. We cover like
question period that it's not just the green patches we see. Everything around the green patches is improving too, just not as blatantly obvious, right?
Like we try and cover 100 acres a year, let's say, but we only get actual hay bale grazing coverage of maybe 15 or 20 acres of that. It's just that we pick the weakest points. So in a hay field, as you're cutting your hay, you know that there's some points that you wish were producing a little better. Those are the ones we hit. So we move from 100-acre piece to 100-acre piece every year, but probably only cover in actuality maybe 15, 20 acres, I would guess. I don't know.
Riley, we're gonna just stick a pin in this, but everyone think about it. A question we got coming in at the end is how to pick what spot. I know the strategy with bale grazing, and I'm answering my own question here, Riley. I'm going to cut you off. I know the answer always been is pick the saline spot, pick the the weaker spot, and I hope to present an argument to you guys to say maybe we're thinking about it the wrong way. Maybe we can see better results by picking the really good spots and working out from there. So excellent presentation, Riley. I'm not going to even give you a chance to answer. Just stick a pin in it, and we'll come back to it at the end. Aaron, if you want to unmute yourself, we got Aaron Nerbas, Black Angus breeders in Shellmouth. Aaron, if your mic's off, tell us about your farm, tell us about your operation. As you heard with Riley, I'm going to interrupt lots, and yeah, have at her, man.
Okay, thanks for having me. I guess our place is up near Russell, Manitoba, and we're a third-generation farm. There's me and my brother that farm together, and my parents are still in the operation as well. And we have about 5,500 acres of all perennial-based land. We have about 600 cows, pairs, and so we're a cow calf operation, but we also sell breeding stock, bulls, and replacement females. As far as bale grazing goes, we've been doing it for quite some time, 15 plus years. Guess we started in 2000, I don't know, it was 2003 or 4. We went to an HM or holistic management course. And from there, we just started talking about doing things a little bit differently. And I think that when we started bale grazing, it was the main driving factor was reduced cost and reduced labor. From there, it's developed into having other benefits as well, but that was the main driving force. We started doing big pods, but we'd wire off three to 5 days at a time. At the time when we first started bale grazing, we were experimenting with extended weaning. So we had the calves on the cow into February, January. We had some issues with calves going through the fence and different things, but it still worked quite well. And then we just kind of, experimented with different things. And, we started with a week move and then 2 weeks and then 3 weeks. We haven't gone beyond 21 days. It's definitely something that's doable in the coldest months of the winter, like January 1st to the end of February, but we just haven't. It seems like a sweet spot for us. And we kind of leave our options open on our last pod to half it or to cut it in thirds with temporary wire if we need to. And yeah, that's pretty much what we do. In this picture here, that the left slide is just us moving from one pod to the next. So we've got enough cross fencing kind of all over the place that we don't really build wires or fences for the bale grazing. We just set up the bale pods in strategic places. And then when the cows are done, we just move them to the next one. In this particular case, they were moving a fair distance, maybe just under half a mile or so. Yep. So that's and these pictures we have a drone, and it's one of my hobbies, just taking pictures lots and flying my drone and taking pictures of what we do. And so
yeah, your drone is probably the highlight of the presentation. We got more pictures to come.
But it's just fun. I like doing it. So.
Oh yeah, I think I tweeted it out. I'm like, this is definitely the most aesthetically pleasing webinar we've had, because like those pictures are amazing. So Aaron, on the left, is that 600 cows heading to a pod? You want to talk about days, like your calculation as far as how many days that's going to last, moving decision, and I know you got some really great pictures of what maybe that exact pod looks like when you move the cows off, but just how you make that decision on number of days, number of bales to set out, maybe throw in feed quality, and then when you're picking a time to move.
Okay, so we basically budget 3% of a cow's body weight as fed, and that includes waste. So, you just kind of figure out what your cow's average weight is. We have our females, we have everything that's a year of age and older altogether, purebreds, commercial, just everything's there. And so we get an average weight there, and then we work 3% on body weight, and that's our total pounds of hay that we need for a 21-day period. And then we just divide that by the weight of the bales to get the number of bales. Fairly simple process. And then whatever that number is, generally depending on the bales, it's anywhere from 370, 380 bales in a pod. So we run here. We have 5 set up for this winter. Some winters we'll have 6. We actually have a half pod that we didn't use last spring because the spring was early and we had stockpiled grass, so we left it. We're going to hit that one last. In terms of waste or when you want to move them, like Riley said, it depends on the weather a lot. Like we had some mild periods on pod 1 and 2 that we were, instead of 21 days, we were 23 or 24. The last pod with the cold snap, we were, I think, 2 days short on our move. So the weather has a factor. And then I guess just how it looks. Like we don't really need every shred of hay picked up. We could push it farther if we wanted to, I suppose, but I think they do clean up pretty well the way we do it. They're never like really crazy hungry when we move them either. They're ready though, and you can tell when you go up there just the way they kind of congregate that they're ready. So that's kind of what we do.
Yeah. I think we got Travis's video we're going to play. We got your time lapse video here. It's super cool. Maybe just walk us through like roughly what day we're on. I know like it's neat. About halfway through, it looks like those cows are about ready to move, but they just keep foraging and foraging and foraging. But my favorite part is you see, as when the bales are gone, you see them heading out to trees and the grass, and they're actually grazing.
Yeah, this was not the app. Like I set up a trail cam that just took a couple pictures every day, and then it just kind of put them all together in a 21-day period. But this wasn't the ideal example to show because it got really, really mild about day 14 here. And so that they just kind of left the bale graze and went foraging because we had stockpiled grass kind of in that paddock where they were. And then they came back to it at the end. So it wasn't really necessarily the best example to do, but it was kind of neat just to see the way they do it, for sure.
Yeah, our as soon as the weather warmed up on our bale grazing pod, the cows, God, they're smart, broke into the good quality hay right when the cold snap hit, and I didn't have the heart to move them out. But as soon as the weather warmed up, they were on. Well, there's a bit of annual ryegrass regrowth. They had the best quality feed on the farm, and we had 260 head out grazing around high quality hay. So it's like,
Yeah.
they know. I mean, they know. We talk about cows like they're dumb, but I mean, they know what they want to do.
Cows will prefer to graze naturally versus eating a bale of hay any day of the week if it's available and it's not too cold. Cold is a kind of a critical factor there. If it's minus 10 or warmer and the sun's out, they'll tend to try and go grazing if they can. But okay, so these two pictures are kind of just the aftermath shortly after we moved. And so we place our bales quite a bit tighter than a lot of people do. I think we were talking about how many acres do you cover in a winter. We have like close to 2,000 bales and we only cover about 40 acres a winter. So ours are quite tight and we do them in square grids. I'm not really sure why. It's just the way we do it. I think maybe it's just, we find it's a little easier to place them consistently, I guess.
Yeah.
But like we don't really have any ring circles. It's just a complete kind of mat of bale grazing residue. And we never want to come back to the same place twice ever in our kind of production and management. And so we have 5,500 acres, and I just did the math a second ago, 40 acres. That would take us, I think, 137 years to cover our land. So, and then that's some of it doesn't necessarily need bale grazing, but it just shows you how little you actually cover in a winter. And it's a fabulous tool to improve your land, but it doesn't improve a lot at any particular, in one winter. It takes a lot of time.
So have you ever experimented with going wider? I don't know if anyone knows Don Guilford. He's on the call tonight. We bicker about this all the time. Don puts his bales shoulder to shoulder and I try and spread them out, but I would love to hear another perspective to back Don's point up.
Yeah, we have. Like when we first started bale grazing, we were quite a bit wider. Like I would say almost double probably what we are now. And I mean, it still works. It improves the land too. But we just found that the residual or the long lasting effects are mitigated or so much less if your bales aren't closer. And we found that, okay, you've got your ring and your production and your soil improvement is great right in that ring. But then you've got these areas kind of adjoining the rings that are still the way it was before and not productive. And we just thought, well, if we're only going to, we want to cover our land, why don't we just cover all of it and not have those areas of no bale grazing residue within the rings? And we just find, I don't know, maybe it's just our particular land that it responds better to a little bit closer placing, but we much prefer it and the results we get from doing it this way. But I'm not saying it's the absolute right way to do it either.
Yeah, we're going to come back to this. I want to talk about bale grazing on grain land. I guess I'm the only one that's going to chat about it, but I have a couple ideas that hopefully stimulate some discussion with you guys. So we'll keep rolling with your next one. I'm curious what you're going to talk about here.
Well, this is just what I say on Twitter sometimes or post these pictures. Like we love to see the apple core effect. And it's just the cows just break into the bale slowly and then the top drops down. And we find it's efficient way. When we see that, we know that there's going to be, minimal residue and that the cows are going to use the feed the most efficiently when you see that. Like that's a good grass alfalfa hay bale, which we try to do mostly. We do mix in some green feed and older straw strategically, depending. But like with hay, like with grass hay and green feed, they tend to just blow the bale up. They'll go to them first because they're the easiest to break apart, and then they'll just pop them, and then they'll eat them for a while, and then they'll go to these type of bales finish them right off, and then they'll go back to the green feed or anything that they broke apart to begin with, and then they'll clean that up last.
Yeah, that time lapse was so cool where cows were taking bales down to this, and then
Yeah.
when they came back to them, it just looked like they were flowing water, like the cows moving those bales around. There needs to be more time lapse videos of cows bale grazing. That was so cool.
I haven't got around to doing it again. I should.
It can and if you could fly a drone up there for 1 month straight, that would be really cool too.
Yeah, but that sounds like a lot of work. If I could get the cows to do that, I'd be on board.
Aaron, great job. I wrote down some questions. We had some questions coming in. We're gonna move on. Stefan, if you want to take your mic off. Yeah, so Stefan from Edie Creek Angus, tell us about your farm, your operation. We got some nice regrowth pictures we're gonna discuss on the year after. So take it away.
Sure. Yeah, we're just 25 minutes east of Winnipeg, right on the kind of edge of good and bush and swamp and stones there. And we have about 200 cows, purebred Angus cows. We'll sell 55 2-year-old bulls and bred heifers in the fall, and we direct market about 65 grass finished cattle. So that's all our cull cows, and then also we try to keep all our calves around and direct market those. Our bale grazing is a little bit different from what you've heard so far. We've been really dry. It's been kind of 4 years of dry, and last year was the driest on record. So buying hay this year was about 7 cents a pound in my yard, and I can't really bale graze 7 cent a pound hay and come out profitable is kind of my take on it. What's saved us for the last few years is baling grass straw. So we have these very kind neighbors who grow grass for seed, and we get to bale those bales after it's been through the combine.
Yeah, we do the same thing with annual ryegrass. I mean, I have mixed feelings on feed tests, and the cows don't necessarily, it's not their favorite thing in the ration, but boy, if you got nothing else, it's invaluable, isn't it?
Yeah, and that ryegrass, that's the other thing you got to watch is you can get endophyte issues, and same with tall fescue. So we've had in the past where we had it in the rows, and I've had cows get drunk on it, and if they just stayed there the whole time, they would have died eventually. So like this year, we baled some tall fescue bales, and I know that risk is there, so we hand feed those bales to the cows 1 day in 6, just because of the endophytes.
Yeah. So what's going on here with your pod? I know you were saying you kind of make a ration or a blend. I don't know, with each row or each few rows, but tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so this is a bit of an older picture from when we used to get feed for 3 to 4 cents a pound, no problem, and it was hay down that whole road, and yeah, easy days there. But so right now we're baling meadow fescue straw. So the cows are getting 2 of those and 2 Timothy straws, 1 oat straw, and then a kind of a lowland grass bale. And then the other more complicated side of it is we also baled some sorghum millet silage bales. So they get 1.5 days of that rolled out. And so for the cleanup deal, it's pretty easy when you're feeding oat straw. Once they've cleaned up the oat straw, you know that it's a pretty good time to move. But we have the herd in 2 groups. The mature cows and the young grass fats are together, and then we get the bred heifers and 3 and 4-year-old cows and the cattle that are going to be finishing for fat this coming calendar year. They're in their own group, and they get a little bit of a simpler row of bales. It's out of 11 bales, it's 6 alfalfa grass and then 3 Timothy straws and 1 wild grass bale.
So Stefan, something we haven't talked about, but I'm just looking at your picture here. I know you guys probably are in a situation where beggars can't be choosers as far as twine on bales, but you want to take a minute to talk about, I see you got net wraps set out normally, not on its end, but taking twine off bales, doing it in the fall versus sisal or plastic.
Sure. Yeah. So I actually used to think I couldn't use net wrap or it's going to be too much of a hassle. But I actually now like it better than the twine bales. If I'm putting bales out in June and July, that's how I'll put them down. And then I'll come in with a skid steer and flip up every bale. And it takes me about 45 minutes to flip 600 bales on their ends. And then a bunch of guys come through and we get those net wraps off. And then I'll go back to the skid steer and flip them back down usually. With that being said, the grass straws aren't that easy. Once you tip them up and you take the net wrap off, they pop. And same with the oat straw bale there in that left-hand side. So tipping them back over doesn't really work. For the twine bales, we'll just cut them, make a loop on one end and flip it over to the other side. And then somebody comes along with a quad and a long bolt on the back of the quad. And that person gets to pull all those twines.
Oh, what a day.
Yeah. It works really well if you have a bunch of folks helping you. It's not fun with two people and 600 bales or whatever in a pod. So
what's well, I guess what's going on with the chair is one question, but I see in the photo on the left, you got a fair bit of snow there, and we've had problems with bale grazing in the past on years where there's lots of snow. That drift going around the bale getting hard, and the cows don't want to, they don't want to have their belly rubbing on snow. So maybe talk if that's ever happened to you and a solution around it.
Yeah. So I'll start with the chair. That's a simple one. That's just our portable post that holds up the reel. That hook there, is hooked onto the fence, and that's what makes the fence hot. And when you get into deep snow, that chair works really well. The permanent fence is taking the strain of the fence that's pulling it back to the north. And that chair is just sitting there to hold it up off the ground. The snow catch there is definitely, it's been a blessing in these really dry years that snow gets stuck underneath the bale residue. When it's that deep, then the cows actually do have a hard time getting feed back over all that. We do get some mountains that stay just snow. But it will grow grass late into June, where if I don't get some rain, we're not going to have grass grow in June for the rest of the farm. Not quite, but definitely benefit catching snow. I'd rather not catch quite that much snow because it can get dangerous for cows rolling over center too, because it gets to be a bit of a hole around that snow. But
yeah.
Well, we got some nice regrazing or growth pictures from your bale grazing here. So talk about what's going on. I mean, you've had some dry years and that's lush green. So yeah, maybe, and actually I probably for everyone else that's listening, like the panelists, we're going to talk about how long we're seeing benefits from bale grazing for, what type of systems implemented after. So you start, and we'll come back around to the other guys in question time.
Yeah, so on the left there, that's, I think it was 2 years after bale grazing. So this last year on a site, and we had the driest year on record, and that grass would never tell you that's the case. So that increased organic matter and the water it holds sure helps. And that's easily 3 times, if not 4 times this year, more grazing days per acre than just adjacent to it where we didn't bale graze. So that's huge. And then on the right there is a fun little thing we tried when I thought about bale grazing pod, where the bale residue, there's quite a bit of good nitrogen and extra nutrients that we could use up. So if I could get some corn planted in there, it stays weed free to start too, because it's just a mat of residue. But I wouldn't say that was something that really worked out. It was fun to do, but if the residue's too wet, then it pushes in front of a planter, and if it's too dry, then the planter has a hard time cutting in. But yeah.
And corn is just naturally doesn't handle competition super, right?
Totally. Yep.
But I want to. Well, I'm trying literally a similar idea. We bale graze some high quality annual ryegrass bales this year on grainland that we're going to go in with corn on next year. So hopefully I've got some cool pictures like this to show next year as well. You got anything else to add, Stefan? You're going to stick around for question time, but you got anything else to add? Shoot. Otherwise, we'll get rolling with Owen here.
one of the other benefits that bale grazing gave us is opening up to the amount of cows you can have. It's sort of the same as calving on pasture. So if I wanted to have 400 cows tomorrow instead of 200, it wouldn't cost me any infrastructure or equipment. I just put that feed out in the field and they go and get it. So that's a big positive that bale grazing's given us for sure. And then another, I'll just give you a negative along with a positive that we did at the beginning.
That's fair.
Was we had some really wet years. It seems really like a long time ago, but the cattle had just been eating really wet grass, nothing in it really, no nutrients. And then the hay we were making was washed a few times before we baled it up. And back then we looked at our feed tests and we just looked at protein or relative feed value, and I didn't pay attention to TDN. And that's a mistake. And you still got to feed your cows well enough. Like what we're doing now, we pull the calf off and try to feed that cow in as cheap a feed as I can for sure. But you can't starve a profit out of them is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I've other than the last week, like in our experience here, or whatever, the last 10 days, that was -40, like that is hard on a cow. But other than that 10-day stretch, boy, what a winter it's been for feeding cows.
Yeah.
It has been quite stress-free. They've done an excellent job cleaning up. And it's not that we had, terrible feed, but somewhat marginal feed. And what you can get away with nice weather versus -40 is pretty amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, great job. Oh, you can take her away. No introduction needed.
Well, just in case someone doesn't know me, I will say that I farm with my mom and dad and my wife and 4 daughters. You can see by that picture that I'm usually the worst looking one in the family,
Thank you.
but I'm proud of that. So the way we started bale grazing, there was actually a quarter section came up for sale that just a mile east of our home farm. In 2008, we bought it. So my dad actually I was just a young buck of Beaver Bend there back in the day. And dad kind of didn't force me by any means, but really laid it out for me. This is just parcel of land's here. It's close. I think it'd be good to winter cows on. And with his kind of encouragement, we bought it. Now you can see in the right side of that photo from that kind of brown spot in the middle, to the right of that is about 60 acres of native pasture. It was really overgrazed. The stuff on the left side of the picture, so about 100 acres. It was also down to tame pasture. About half of it was grazed and the other half had been hayed, but the whole entire quarter was in pretty sad shape. It had been grain farmed for years before. So we made 11 paddocks to start with. They're about 8 to 10 acres in size. You can see, we thought we were really doing a good job with with all the paddocks the same size. We weren't. But that was, back in the day when we didn't have
Google Maps wasn't around when you bought it.
No, it wasn't. No. So you can kind of see some residue or some spots there. The way we started off, our initial idea was to fill up each paddock once a year and graze in that one paddock the entire winter. So that's what we started doing. We had, like I said, we anywhere from 180 cows up to 260 over the years, but we would take between 100 and 150 to the bale grazing quarter. So we had wires, we had 3 or 4 days amount of bales, and then we would move the wire. I think almost everything that's been mentioned today, we tried at one point. When we were doing that, trying to move every 3 or 4 days, it seemed we would get either a lot of snow and then the cows weren't grounded, weren't getting the shock, or even without snow, cows would get bored, and maybe halfway through the winter, one would go through the cross fence. And once one went through, it just seemed that the rest of the winter was a total write-off as far as fighting with them. And, it's funny. I thought I was smart then. I think I'm smart now. But it's fun what you learn, because what a bunch of work. Instead of just giving the cows all the bales like I do now, I went out and chased them out and put the string back up, knowing full well in 4 days I'd be doing the same thing. So,
or the next day.
Yeah. So then we got a little bit, what I like to say, smarter. I don't mean to say there's not a right or wrong way, but we still started using, instead of 1 paddock per winter, we thought, well, we'll use 2 paddocks per winter, or 3. So we still spaced out about a week's worth of bales at a time and put those groups of bales farther apart and started pounding posts. I think Riley mentioned he does that. And then I was putting insulators on posts, stringing the temporary fence out on them. That worked a lot better. I then evolved to, instead of bothering with insulators when it's -20, trying to pound a double-headed nail into a post, I simply wrapped the temporary string around the post. That all worked really good too. But it was Aaron's video actually on Twitter that I saw with the time-lapse video is what got us motivated. So I guess Aaron's really the leader in all this.
He should be moderating.
Yeah, he should be. So now we take enough bales for whatever, 3 or 4 months, whatever it works out to. And we just pick real bad spots, like up high. There's a knoll in that quarter that just blew dirt for years and years and years. Now we do about 18 to 21 days pods, just the same as Nerbas do, except we've got quite a few less cows. And that has worked really, really well. The neat part about this quarter is I kind of alluded to the fact that it was in pretty rough shape. You can go to the next slide, Trev. So this over the years, summer grazing's also evolved, and I'm taking these 9 8-acre paddocks and I am splitting them in half now with a temporary wire just to get more pounds per acre. So this, Trev, you can press play here. I had figured out where I wanted the cross fence to be to cut the paddock in half, and I either did my math wrong in square footage or whatever, but I really, really, really overgrazed it. So you can see I sent a Snapchat. I was so proud of this to a few friends. It looked like a table. There was nothing left at all, and I really felt bad that I had overgrazed this so hard. But there had been no rain, and 28 days later, the regrowth was just phenomenal. And that goes back to whether you're moving cows every 4 days, 5 days, 21 days, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Even if you're hauling feed out to a field and rolling it out, the key is there's manure on the land, which is stimulating soil biology, which provides a healthy environment for the biology. And it just, the root systems are there. The regrowth's incredible. Joe had kind of asked me to talk more about this quarter in specific, because I really don't have much to add to what everyone else has said about bale grazing. But when I bought this quarter, we ran steers, 300 steers, but this quarter was just part of a whole system. So steers would go through once or twice. Then I transitioned it into a cow-calf quarter. I was taking 40 pair there. I had all the paddocks, but it was tough to get proper grazing, graze everything twice with around the 60-day rest. This year, I went to 60 cows. I could have done it a few years ago. I went to 60 pair, and it doesn't almost, I wouldn't say I'm drought proof, but it almost doesn't seem to matter the rainfall. I get 2 grazes on each paddock with more than 60 days rest, and I've increased my carrying capacity 20 pair. If I really had to or needed to, I bet you I could go 70, 75 pair in this one quarter. So I'm really only talking about one quarter section on one farm, but this is the whole principle behind bale grazing. It's not just feeding on the land. It's better pasture. It's a reduced manure bill. It's just a net positive. And yeah, like I think anything, even if somebody on here doesn't feel comfortable setting out bales listening to this, well, get your cows in the field, take them bales every day if that's what you're comfortable with. Your manure is still out there on the land.
I did some math. You told me earlier you bale grazed 4,000 bales on that quarter. That's
approximately, yeah.
28 bales an acre on 140. So you'll have some pretty good land improvements because of that. Yeah. Not to mention, it's the practices you put in place after it, which is rotational grazing, moving cows. Like the benefit of the bale grazing is going to be around a lot longer because, yes, you stimulate the environment, but keep it stimulated by putting the right practices in place.
Yeah. I guess I should mention, for the most part, we make enough feed for our own, but we've been buying bales. That's just the way it works out. Those bales we buy are the ones that we bale graze. We have a deal with a neighbor who's not too far away. He sows down some marginal land, so it's mostly grass hay, a bit of alfalfa. That's what we bring in. I did experiment a few years ago, just bale grazing green feed. I didn't know as much as I do now, and I wasn't as comfortable leaving cows to clean it up like I am now. But the trouble I found just bale grazing straight green feed was you've got all those bales and they can do whatever they want with them, move them around. So let's say I gave them 10 days of bales. Well, after 6 days, I was there and it was cold and they had moved every bale around, spread it out, and they had every oat kernel was gone and they were just left with straw. And I just wasn't comfortable doing that. So, and I also found with that straw, a little harder on the ground the following year. It's not waste, it's still there, improving soil health. but I had more weeds in those paddocks. And I guess as a negative too, buying bales, you don't necessarily know what you're getting all the time. We do have some weed issues on that quarter section that I'm so far I'm managing with. That's not true. We did a little bit of spraying and some real bad knotty thistle parts, but for the most part,
we're gonna talk more about
Okay.
undesirable plants,
okay.
not the W word.
Yeah, and I guess no one else has really mentioned winter watering system. I could probably talk for an hour on this system alone and stuff we've learned and good and bad. But what it is, there's a dugout just behind those cows. There is a trench from the dugout to the bottom of that hole where that 8-foot vertical culvert's in the ground. There's a motion eye on that black board. A cow walks up, that triggers the pump, pumps up into that bowl. Cows come and drink. If it happens to fill up on them, there's holes at the top of the bowl, so the water just runs back down inside. And when the cows leave, water drains back through. If someone's looking to put one of these in, I think I would recommend a windmill, because you get cloudy days in January. There's not much sun where we live as it is in January. If you get 1 or 2 cloudy days with 100, 150 cows, it's just the batteries simply cannot be charged. We have 3 solar panels per 3 batteries. The system has a little, I call it a brain, but a control panel that shuts the batteries off. And I think they're 11 volts ish, 11 and a half. I could be wrong on that. But the point is, it doesn't let the batteries get drained down and freeze, which is a positive. But it's constantly, as soon as those batteries get down, it shuts off, and then the cows are there wanting to drink, but they can't till the sun charges the batteries. So we've had a bit of an issue with that. Part of the way we've solved that is I always have 3 batteries at home, charged, warm, ready to go. It's only a mile from home, so it takes me half an hour to drive the batteries there, change them out.
And just to add, our panelists, great job talking about winter watering. Oh, it's been a question that we've been getting come in lots. So guys, once we get into question time, if you guys wouldn't mind just discussing your winter watering, head to mine, Trav. I'm not going to spend very much time on this because classic us, we're way over time.
I got one more. Do you want me to go ahead?
Go for it.
I was just going to, somebody mentioned weather, and I think it was you, and how you meant to change your like how many days they're going to be there. And our system, they come to that where the winter watering system is, they can get behind trees, really great protection from a northwest wind, especially. When that cold snap hit, we were on about day 15 or 16 of 21. So they were getting to the point where they were really having to turd sift. And actually, Aaron, I was hoping you were going to use that.
No, I got turd sift down. Damn it.
Sorry, I stole that. I've used that term turd sifting about 1,000 times. I'll give Aaron credit for it maybe twice. But they were getting down to that point where they were really having to work for it. So when that cold weather hit, we just, being a mile away, we brought them enough bales per day and fed them behind those trees. Left that paddock open so they could go back and eat, but they didn't because it was so cold. But as soon as it warmed up again, we just quit taking feed on their own accord. They went back out and cleaned it up. So just kind of adapting to how it goes. Had that cold snap hit on day 3 or 4 of the 21 days, I wouldn't have done anything any different. But just managing weather, managing the situation.
Yeah, and this, I won't touch too long on it. I know we have some mixed grain and cattle farms on. Yeah, if we're talking about bale placement, I know we did for years, saline spots, poor spots. And I thought, we're a commercial cow herd. We're profiting off our increased production with market price for beef, which isn't necessarily good. So this is the best spot on this specific half section. I wanted to bale graze on it and see if I can turn it into real bushels in the bin and be compensated accordingly for the land improvements that the bale grazing gives. So everyone did a great job, you guys. Awesome job presenting your farm. The questions are rolling in. So I warned you guys this one was coming, but for sure, this is the #1 concern, I think, with bale grazing is, well, silage, we can guarantee quality and it is somewhat cost controlled, and putting up dry hay sometimes in the summertime in Manitoba is an absolute nightmare. I think we can all attest to that. So I'm not sure exactly how to frame the question, so that's why I'm going to make Riley answer it first. So I guess just talk about maybe the challenges with putting up dry hay and how you justify it in your system. Right? Maybe Riley, you start, then we'll go Aaron and Stefan.
I know so little about silage that it's an easy decision. No, the truth is that we made a decision a long time ago that we are going to be a grass operation. We sell grass-fed beef. That's the direction we went. So it's been that made the decision easier. What's been challenging is that we're trying to find a way to continue to replenish our hay ground, knowing that we're taking bales off. And so that's why we've moved to that system where we're putting hay back on the hay ground itself. But it's worked for us. I'm sure there's other options, and Joe usually tells me that there's other great options when we get together, but we haven't in the last year. So I just keep.
I know. Well, maybe you should come on the other webinars.
Maybe we are, but it's working for us. It's highly cost effective for us. I mean, our tractor runs about. We have 100 pair, and our tractor runs maybe half an hour a week. So I mean, that makes sense. It also makes sense for some of you know me, but not everyone. I teach as well, so this is not a full-time gig for me. So it gives me that flexibility as well. I have more time in the summer and less in the winter.
Right. Aaron, do you want to take a stab at dry hay versus silage? Benefit cost?
Yeah, sure. I think our reasons would echo Riley's a lot, just in terms of grass operation. We're 100% perennial, and our equipment shows it as well. So we don't cost anything. And so, you know, to actually do silage, we would have to upgrade our equipment. You know, there's a place for silage as well, but it just doesn't really fit what we're doing. In terms of haying versus silage, like we don't actually hay too much ourselves anymore. We're buying 90% of our hay requirements. The only hay we're making is just sort of small isolated pieces where maybe we don't get there to graze it in time, or it just doesn't make sense that particular year and we'll rent a disc spine. But we're buying 90% of our feed. And so we got a couple guys locally that are supplying us, and, you know, we have a good relationship with them. There's no contracts in place. It's just year to year verbal, but it's working quite well. And we trust the quality that they bring us in terms of, you know, how it got put up, when they cut it, the maturity, things like that. So, and the other thing about buying is the you know, you're importing nutrients onto your land, and that's quite valuable. You know, buying is one way to do it. It's not the only way, but that is a big benefit of doing it that way. And the other thing is the lifestyle for us. Like I'm personally not a tractor guy. I just dislike it. I get bored very quickly. You know, I'm not saying that tractors are evil and you shouldn't have them, but it's just we'd rather spend our time in summer enjoying family time. And to be honest, we like to put our effort into grazing management versus haying. So that's
great answer. Yeah, awesome. Stefan?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. We're similar too. Everything's grain free. So in these dry years, it's been a little bit painful to turn down those options. But silage is just a little bit hard to hand, you know, to get out to the cows. If you're trying to spread out where you're putting them in you have quite a bit more options if you can put those bales in that back piece that needs it, and you don't have to get out there with the tractor and feed it. And that nutrients you lose having the bale sit out there in the field while it's waiting for the cow to eat it. You do see green, dark grass growing around the bale on the field. So it is happening. There is some leaching off the top of the bale, but it's getting sucked up right there really quick. And I don't have a problem with it. That's just a part of the 10% that the cow wastes, is that outside shell that had some leaching on it. So.
And as a soil healther, I mean, we know what that waste is. It's the green patches that are there for a decade after, right? Yeah. So it's feeding a system. It's solving a purpose. I got a neighbor, he calls it bale wasting. How's the bale wasting going? And I'm like, great, you're borrowing my tractor and I haven't used it yet. Oh,
I don't have much to add to that, guys. We do silage bales, not for bale grazing purposes, but if somebody, what we've done a little bit of, and cold weather does ruin this, what I'm about to say, but in years past on the home section, we've just taken out enough bales to last, the silage bales to last 4 or 5 days. So we're still only running a tractor every 4 or 5 days. And they're bale grazing. Minus 40 weather would ruin that plan with silage bales because they freeze. But if somebody is listening to this and they've kind of gone all in with the silage bale thing or something, you can still achieve manure on the land and bale graze. It's just a little more labor involved in it. But still, at once every 5 days, and manure on the land is better than every day and feeding the corrals. So there is a place for it. But I mean, I echo what all three of the guys said. Hay and quality of life and benefit to soil. Yeah, hay is the way to go.
And I guess I'm the one unique guy here where again, quality of life, you name it. My backup plan is a successful cover crop business. I'm still hoping to make it big in the major leagues. So dry hay does not work for me and my baseball career. So we try and leverage all as much of our grain land as we can into our bale grazing system. So we grow golden German millet as we try and get it for seed production. It's higher quality hay. Stefan was talking about grass seed production. We do a lot of that. It's a nice kind of risk averse crop to grow. You're not going to get rich doing it, but we can get fall grazing and that makes excellent bale grazing. So we're trying to get away from dry hay and more leverage our grain land and use the cows as a tool to improve that grain land. So one operation feeding another.
Aaron said something good about he's not a tractor guy too. So that depends on the individual. As regenerative as I am, and the more I learn about it, the more I like it, but I cannot help myself. I've loved tractors since I was a little kid. I like running them. I like spending time with them. And Dad and I will I have 4 girls, so we'll rotate girls come and hang out in the tractor with us. So I completely get going to the lake or golfing or rotational grazing management. I do a lot of that, all that stuff myself. But yeah, if Aaron doesn't like running a tractor, I don't know why you would. And I do like running a tractor, so I don't know why I wouldn't. Does that kind of make sense? So,
oh yeah, it's different strokes for different.
Yeah,
folks.
exactly. Yeah, for sure.
It's the neat thing about these webinars where we can present a few different systems from producers, talk about the benefits and costs, and you can make the decision for yourself.
Well, owning tractors is not a benefit. I know that.
I know
I've just accepted it, and I sleep well at night.
So Owen talked about winter watering. You guys, maybe let's go in reverse order. Stefan, if you want to start, and then Aaron, and then Riley, just talk about maybe even like bale placement. If winter water is a concern, where you're going to put bales, and if anyone's brave enough to talk about cows licking snow. We had a question come in on that. So take it away, Stefan.
Yeah, sure. So this is the first year we're bale grazing on an open piece with no access to bush for the cows. So they have less of a walk this year. It's a 1/4 mile. We do put windbreaks out for the field by the bale grazing rows that they're on. And then we also put some more up at the water. It's just a typical heated water. Halfway down the alley, those tall fescue bales that have endophyte risks, I rolled them double high so that there's a windbreak for them to get to on the way to water, because those days are pretty miserable to get down there. Usually we've been going through a bush, so it was a 3/4 mile walk one way, and I found that about half the cows didn't walk and they licked snow, and the other half the cows came in a group typically and drank out of the heated water bowl.
Good stuff. Aaron?
Okay. Yeah, we have water. We don't lick snow. I know guys that do it. It can be done for sure. I think part of extended days and having 21-day pods, I think there's no question in my mind that you'll get better utilization if you have access to water. I think licking snow, you should probably limit it to less days personally. So ours, we actually switched wintering sites this winter. We moved about a mile away. Prior to that, we were using a shallow well with a solar system and with a windmill. And so we had an insulated trough with drink tubes. It worked really, really well. The only difference this year is that we have hydro there, and we upgraded our insulated trough. So it's submersible down a well, and it's on a pill switch. When the pill activates the pump, it pumps overhead into the trough. When it shuts off, the water drains into the trough and then back down the well, so there's no freeze points. So the only time we get any freezing is just a little bit of skip of ice on the surface of the drink tubes, but it's very, very rare. Our cattle just kind of make a train all day back and forth. They're just being single file. And so that helps a lot to keep the water open. You're getting water replenishment kind of more throughout the day. So that thermal activity of the water from the ground just keeps it from being too cold and freezing up. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how we do it.
Cool. RJ?
We are, all our winter waters are connected to a well presently. So we've had cattle walk ways, and sometimes if they are walking a ways, there will be some cows that stay behind and lick snow, but there is always access to fresh. Our issue is that we do, because we're doing a hay land, we got about 160 acres that need to be put into the system and doesn't have that type of water. So like I said at the start, we farm with my parents, and we're always in discussions about how we should make that work. And we're looking into systems, and that's why I listen to these things as much as anything else. That's we got about 2 years before we have to be there, so we got to figure out what we're going to do. But right now they are walking to the yard.
Cool.
I'll just add one little bit. I was told when I started bale grazing, cows could lick snow if they had the proper kind, but what I was told I definitely could not do was have cows lick snow and drink water. It'd be one or the other. Cows that had access to water one day, if they didn't have it the next day, they wouldn't lick snow. Totally false. Riley just mentioned it. We have cows, the further we get away from the winter watering system,
They just don't come back.
So, and I've got a little more comfortable too as I've done it. I mentioned the 3 batteries. It was going to be cloudy for a couple days. I know it's not going to be a lot of water there, but if it's got good snow, instead of taking the time to change the batteries, I just don't. And we've seen no
Bale grazing, can you still see benefits to this day? And maybe like how much less benefits you see from when you started, or however long ago, whether that was 10 or 15 years ago, till now, what those spots look like. And then we'll go Riley and then Stefan. But just talk about how long you're seeing land improvements for.
Well, we started bale grazing before I came back from Alberta. I came back from Alberta in 2009, I guess. And Dad was already running that. So we still see benefits from some of the original spots, for sure. So that's been 15 years or better. We did have some of that. We were doing strips, rows, and then moving the wires. And so it's funny because you can still see those spots where they're like lush green and then nothing, and then lush green and then nothing. So it does fit with what Aaron was talking about with tightening things up. That's why we did our circles, right? Just to make sure Google Earth is paying attention to us.
Thank you, everyone.
It was just a way of making sure that there was no more strips. Wherever we were going was covered. We try and pick some weak points. I know that Joe was talking about maybe picking better points, but we pick the weak points or hilltops, and hopefully the nutrients kind of move down.
For sure. Aaron, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like we try and pick our poorest ground to focus on for sure. We just think that that's the best kind of return on your investment with bale grazing personally. In terms of how long you see benefits, like Riley said, we got stuff that's 15 plus years where you can still visually see lines and the difference. Now, if you just went to kind of, you bale graze and then you were like, open season graze, continuous grazing, you probably wouldn't see that after a while. The effects would be lessened. But if you manage it properly with rest recovery after, I think the benefits will be there a long, long time. I think the peak for production for us, like our bales are more concentrated. So the first year following is always not necessarily the most impressive year. You'll get a lot of, it's just breaking down and you're getting some smothering. But the second and third and fourth year following, that's when we really get our maximum benefit to increase production. And then you'll just see kind of a taper off after that, just very, very gradual over time. But even, 8 to 10 years after, it's fairly good. Yeah. So
I would agree with both your sentiments. Stefan, how about you?
I'm pretty much exactly the same. Yeah, about a 5-year window where it's just blasting everything off and looking a lot better, and then it does taper down.
Oh, we saw yours from Google.
Yeah, I think exactly like Aaron said, if I was going to continuously graze it, I don't think the benefits would be there. But with bale grazing and then added in rotational grazing, yeah, I'm seeing results from the very first year we did it, which was 12, 13 years ago. So
I got to, guys, I've been bragging to people that people have been staying on right through question time through these webinars. Like, you guys are the best yet. Somehow we're gaining attendees through the question period. I have no idea what's going on.
I thought you were going to say people were leaving.
No, it's the weirdest thing. Okay, we got a really good question here, you guys. Stefan, we'll start with you. How long into spring do you typically bale graze? Just wondering, once the frost starts coming out, what type of damages the cows are going to do to those areas?
So when we bale graze in the spring, we do put them on the piece with a bit of roll on them, so that most of our farm is really flat, heavy gumbo clay, and can get wet. That was about 5 years ago when we used to do that. But so yeah, we have them on a piece that has a bit of a roll on it. We do bale graze pretty late in the spring, even through May, later than I'd like, but it's just a bit of what we can do with the land base we have. If I had more acres, I'd love to stockpile some more grass, or I could run less cows, but yeah, our 200 cows is kind of what works for us. So definitely the best effect is when you bale graze on just frozen ground. The grass responds faster for sure.
Cool. RJ?
Well, we're done bale grazing by the mid-April. I guess we move on to stockpile forages at that time. We are on hay ground too. We do pick that. We are making choices, as well as Stefan said, on where your later ones are going. You can put them anywhere in December. It's frozen, right? But even now, we're getting some thaw and things like that. So you make some choices on where you're putting it. But we do take them off by mid-April, and they end up stockpiled and then getting ready for calving in May, right? So that's what we do.
Cool. How about you, Aaron?
yeah, pretty much similar to Riley. We bale graze for 120 days. Usually that's kind of our target, and starting December, first week in December, and then we finish up the last week in March. So right around April 1st on a normal year, we're done bale grazing and we're moving on to stockpile. And then if weather conditions dictate that, if the snow's crusty or things aren't conducive to grazing, then we'll just take trailer loads of hay and dump them kind of in a modified short-term bale grazing. But yeah, our land is quite sandy too. So, I mean, you can't really mess it up too much, even if you were spring bale grazing, but we're pretty much done by end of March.
Oh, yeah, same thing, end of March. We've been caught some years. We couldn't get the stockpiled grazing because of too much snow or too wet, and we have been I wouldn't say wrecked some ground, but had to bale graze or roll bales out on some stuff and got muddy, and we've saw lots of weed pressure and stuff. So yeah, I wasn't as careful of where I placed those bales later in the spring, and I should have been.
Okay, just gonna get some housekeeping stuff, you guys. I'm gonna give away the hat. Jagger Thomas, please put your mailing information in. You won the hat. And Randy Lumbach, you're getting a bar of soap. So unless you don't put your mailing address in which case I'm keeping the soap. But just I was getting cocky, and now we're losing some guys. And I promised Stefan and Aaron. They both have excellent cattle herds that are raising animals. You know, with the information we're learning about genetics and epigenetics within a cow herd, and of course that transfers into bulls and heifers and whatnot. Both these guys are selling breeding stock, bulls, and I think heifers. So guys, why don't you guys take 5 minutes, talk about the management of your herd, why it's important, and yeah, we can talk about promotion of your herd or selling bulls or whatever you want to start with. Stefan, why don't you start? I know you got a bull sale coming, and then Aaron, have at it.
Thanks. Yeah, we're selling bulls March 13th this year. It's always the second Saturday of March, and always 2-year-old bulls. This year it's going to be online on DV auction. You can also come up to Ashland if you want to be there. But yeah, we develop our bulls as 2-year-olds, try to grow them slow so they can cover lots of cows and live a long time doing it. On the female side, everything's forage only program. We get our heifers bred yearlings, and we'll sell bred heifers this fall. Hopefully you'll find 80 bred heifers I can sell, something like that. Yeah, come check us out if you want a tour. We're always open for tours, and it to take advantage of bale grazing, it certainly helps to have an efficient cow doing it.
Owen and I are heading up to take a tour on Friday, and super looking forward to it.
Yeah, awesome.
Hopefully the weather's nice.
Yeah. Sure.
Aaron, you want to talk about your herd for a bit?
Sure. Yeah, we're not that different from Bouw's, like in terms of our philosophies and even the genetics, a lot of the gene pools that we're using. So what we do, we sell our bulls private treaty off the farm. So it's on a first come basis, and for the most part, they're just flat priced. So the earlier you come, the better the selection is. We sell about 65 a year, roughly. We also sell replacement females. We sell them as calves directly off the cow. So they're just 7-month weaners, and it's been working pretty good for us. It gives the buyer the opportunity to take them home and raise them in their own environment, which I think is beneficial to them becoming a cow and fitting into their system. And, you know, you talked about it with the genetics and the epigenetics, and it doesn't really matter if you're grass-based or not, but you should always be buying genetics from somebody that does things similar to how you do it. It doesn't make any sense to try and buy genetics from somebody that's, you know, not in tune with the same type of management or their production system. And like Stefan said about having genetics that thrive under bale grazing, I'd take it a little step further to just the whole system, you know, the summer grazing management, and just a cow that fits into the, you know, the kind of the, I guess we call it the holistic regenerative kind of mindset, that just a kind of a low input model, and letting the cows do all the work because they can if we let them. Just can't micromanage them all the time and do everything on their behalf. So that's our philosophy.
Aaron, I'm going to hijack the moderator's job here because I have a question. When you sell the weaned replacements off the cow, do you get a premium for that? I actually had somebody, I've done a little bit of that myself. Do you get a premium right off the cow, or are you just selling basically market price?
No, we get a premium. It's better than steer price.
Okay.
So
I've sold them in this time of year, and I always just kind of take market price and add a bit of money per head, and that's good to know. That's super.
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of averaging maybe steer price plus 20%, kind of in that ballpark.
Okay. Now the moderator's gone. He went to the washroom, so now I'm actually in charge. So I guess Riley, you don't have a bull sale, so there's not much you can talk about. Just something I wanted to touch on, Riley, when you showed the picture of the cow that came from our place, that's just one of the best feelings I get as someone who sold the odd commercial replacement female. But I just cannot echo enough about genetics and raising a heifer to fit into your herd and letting your system and Mother Nature kind of dictate which ones make it and don't. And I bought bulls from Edie Creek. I bought one bull from Aaron. He broke his penis in year 2. I still haven't got the refund check in the mail. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, they are for this kind of. I can't think of two better guys. I'm not just blowing smoke up the rear ends. As far as forage-based genetics, these are the 2 places I would start if you're looking to go down this path. I really mean that. Riley, you can keep buying from me.
I won't, but thanks, Taylor. These guys, I do want to say the same thing. Like, I've been to both their operations, both, and this isn't what they just talk about. They're doing it all the time, and they're out there and they know their animals. And if people are looking for bulls, those are 2 very good operations, and we've been thrilled the whole time. So, and Owen, yes, you still have cows in our herd, and Taylor Triple Farm is a wonderful place. And it's right down the road. And that's how we got started, right? Johnson's in Clearwater and Taylor's in Mather, and that's how we got into Angus to begin with. So, yeah.
And I'll resonate. I haven't bought bulls from either of these guys, but we bought really nice looking fat steers, essentially bulls, yearling bulls. They end up in our pasture after coming off 20 pounds of corn or whatever. They got to eat grass and breed for the summer. They're not looking good by the time they come off in winter, and then they got to eat marginal hay and a bit of oats in the wintertime. And I got a couple out here that don't look fantastic, to be perfectly honest. They don't fit in our system, and it was spending even a little bit more on a bull to have something that fits with your system. It's going to pay dividends so much in the long term. So I want to stress what these guys said. Yeah. Pick breeding stock from a herd that you want to mimic anyway. Guys, I got time for 2 more questions. We got a question about weeds, and I'll touch on this. We have a thistle problem after we bale graze generally in a lot of our land. As I get further down soil health, I don't like the term weeds, undesirable plants. I think those thistles are probably trying to heal my soil, cycle those minerals, but they're a bit of an eyesore. So maybe if you guys want to talk about weed management, or if you use cows or it doesn't bother you, you bale graze right on number 3 highway.
I was just
so
going to say,
everyone
knows that I have, the farther I get down this path, same thing Joe said, I don't like the word weed. For the most part, we have controlled it with intensive rotational grazing in the summer. Those weeds are opportunistic. So if the rest of the plants surrounding them are really healthy and have a chance at rest, the weeds we get maybe from a bale that was full of seeds, they don't seem to spread too bad. But worst case scenario, we have used some broadleafs, and we do get rid of some beneficial broadleafs. The saving grace there is the soil is so healthy that the grasses that are left do a really good job compensating for that lack of diversity. But it is. I don't know. And that field I mentioned, bale grazing too wet in the spring, lots of weeds there. But the more I look at it, like Joe said, it's not a weed. It's maybe a plant I don't love being out there, but it's really just diversity and grazing each paddock at different times per year. Sometimes those weed plants, for lack of a better term, get grazed early, and they're there, but it's not an issue, and it's certainly not taking away from the amount of grass we're growing.
Riley, you're the other brave guy. Bale graze is right on the highway for us all to see. That's really nice of you.
Yep. Yeah, we do. My parents love it. They're huge. They used to have it all tucked away, right? And we used to build on the same patch all the time. And I'm the one who says, no, we move it around. But we had some trouble with weeds when we used to feed a little straw, because they didn't finish the straw, and that would smother it out. And we get thistle out of that. We haven't had much weed problems. We feed hay only, because we are keeping those calves on. And then the next year we go in with grassers and do a high density graze. throughout a couple times, and that's kind of like our harrowing system, I guess, a little bit, and stirs it up a bit, if nothing else. So we're moving them 3 and 4 times a day on those paddocks for sure. So that we're not finding that there's, I mean, weeds are weeds, and I know that they heal the land and all those things, but we're just not seeing that because there isn't so much smothering.
Cool. Stefan?
Yeah, somewhat similar. I haven't had too many issues yet. I'd say with the straw, the issue with that too is it doesn't disintegrate or turn into soil as fast as nice nitrogen-rich alfalfa. So that can be an issue if you put a whole bunch of oat straw bales in a spot. We're not doing a straight oat straw or anything like that, but something to watch for. Haven't done anything to control weeds. Quackgrass does like to come back real strong and use up at our place, but it's also a kind of grass that you can't kill, and it's a pretty good one to graze and use up those nutrients. But I have thought about spreading out like a fescue with a broadcaster or annual ryegrass or something while the cattle are still out there to see if they'd get a jump, but haven't done anything too much for weeds.
Cool. Aaron?
Yeah, just same as what everybody else said, pretty much. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a real big issue with us. The first year you will see weeds, some thistle, some annual weeds too, if they came in. But I mean, with kind of intensive grazing over time, they just clip them off. They clip off what's ever there anyway. And they just, as the land kind of heals itself and your organic matter increases with the bale grazing, those weeds just dissipate over time. And I'd say generally speaking, after year 3, you don't even see the weeds anymore. So kind of a non-issue. And
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry. Go.
I just did notice that Riley brought up the H word there. The harrow.
Harrow bar?
No, the harrow word, the H word.
We don't actually harrow. I just know people have talked about recreational harrowing of their bale grazing, and we just feel that the cows' hooves will take care of what we need.
Okay, you guys. I guess I'm the only grain farmer on the panel. I can harrow all of my land in one day, all of it. So I have one day of GPS, no worries, sitting there podcasting all day. If I want to go out and recreational harrow my bale grazing area, you guys can all go to hell. I'm going to go over it a dozen times.
It is different if you're going to be cropping. That's a kind of a whole different side that I can see where harrowing is a benefit. But if it's strictly a perennial stand and you never intend to crop it and you're just going to leave it, there's really no point in harrowing. It's short-term gain. It'll look prettier and you'll get maybe more grass. It'll look good the first year, but it actually is long-term detrimental and lessens the biological effect of bale grazing.
I couldn't agree more.
Me neither. Yeah.
One idea I had, because we're bale grazing some pretty marginal hay, and then we just try and supplement with grain if the cows need it. But I wanted to turn our bale grazing residue into not waste, but I thought what a perfect opportunity to start some like high value, whether it's garden vegetables or hemp or whatever. So I spent about 6 weeks, my basement, I turned it into a greenhouse, starting all these plants. Then went out the middle of May, transplanted all these into perfect residue, warm soil, and we had a frost 10 days later. So it's too bad, but I still have this envision of all this residue that's being created, a weed-free environment, perfectly fertilized, that it's actually going to be maybe my best paying crop. I don't know when I'll have time to start growing vegetable gardens or hemp, but it's a really great idea in principle, and I ain't stopping that. I'm like, I can't
Vegetable
wait.
gardens are gonna really infringe on the baseball, Joe.
What about a hemp garden? You're right. To hell with it. I'll play baseball. Okay, guys, I got one last question for you. And if you guys have anything to add, have at it. Got a question about minerals. What's everyone do for winter minerals? Owen, why don't you start? And then we'll go Aaron, Stefan, Riley, and I'm going to shut up.
We use Sweet Pro mineral tubs. I used to sell them myself. Got busy, kind of changed direction what I was doing. But yeah, if my numbers on our website, I love Sweet Pro. I would talk about it for a day if I could. Just love them. That's the tub we use.
Cool. Riley?
We take Redmond salt, and then we actually mix our own blend in an old cement mixer with some copper and calcium and selenium and iodine. And that's what we give them, and we just put that out free choice.
Cool. Stefan?
Yeah, we're a free choice mineral by the water, and salt there too. Nothing too special over winter.
You're up, Aaron.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Free choice, loose, just blue cobalt salt and 1-to-1 master feeds mineral. And they don't really use too much in the first 2 weeks, very little. And then the last week they'll use quite a bit. And so we just got to make sure that it's topped up in that last week.
Okay, guys, I lied. I got one more question. I'll figure out an order here. But for somebody that's just starting out bale grazing tomorrow, because they watched this webinar and they learned a bunch of really cool information, what's one thing you did bale grazing for way too long that you should say that's an easy fix? Don't do this. So maybe, sure, you're looking at me. Owen, why don't you go first? The biggest change you made in bale grazing for somebody just starting out to make their life easier because you've done it and are going to offer this advice.
I would figure out, if you're hauling the bales, how many bales on a trailer you can haul, how many cows you got, do the math that Aaron talked about before, weight of your cows, and start taking a week at a time. Like if you're going to start tomorrow, a week at a time.
Good advice. We'll go Aaron, Stefan, you get the last word, RJ.
I think I would say just have faith in your numbers a little bit when you're doing your budgeting for pounds and bales, and kind of trust that, and then work on the weather to know whether you're going to be long or short, but don't give in to the cows. If they, I think everybody goes through that process of like, wow, geez, they look hungry. I got to move them. They're making noise. But if the numbers are there to support that they're getting their nutritional needs and they're getting their pounds, you don't have to worry about it. Let them clean up and then move them to the next one. That's what I would say. And then one other point is that if you haven't bale grazed and you're thinking about considering it, I know it's tough to travel right now, but I mean, go visit some people that are doing it now and get some firsthand kind of experience and just see a couple different operations on how they do it and go from there. And then just start, experiment, change things, learn as you go.
And if you can, go visit the guy bale grazing that's also selling bulls.
Yeah.
Stefan, what do you think about that?
I'm for it. Yeah, we got lots of time for tours. You guys come down Friday, and whoever else wants to. That sounds good. But yeah, for the dumbest mistake we ever made when we started, we were so inside our box of not wasting feed, but we wanted to get the cattle out. Was we actually started by putting rings around the bales. We gave them one row at a time, and we put rings on them. And you are not taking advantage of bale grazing when you do that. So try to step all the way out, get the cattle on the field, and let them just eat that bale until it's gone. And don't bring a ring.
Owen and I were at
I was hoping you're going to tell the story.
Owen and I were at a winter forage conference. I forget when and where, but years ago. But there was a guy there that he bale grazed, but had over 100 bale rings, like 110 bale rings or something like that.
And the saddest part about it, he was proud as punch.
Super proud
So
about how
pumped
many
about
bale
it.
rings.
Yeah.
So it's like you're halfway there for sure. Riley, how many bale rings you got?
2 maybe. our grass calves, our calves are getting a bit now, right? But I don't even know. The one's probably in pieces. I agree with Aaron. Talk to people, know what you want to try, and find someone who's doing that, because lots of people are doing different things in bale grazing. I would be very cautious about anything that takes a lot of equipment or moving of wires. That's where you make the most mistakes. I found when we were in constant moving wires and trying to find that system, you'll be so frustrated. Like you almost have to set up all those bales and learn that one winter where you just hate different things and try it. But if you're just trying it, I think you got to go talk to somebody. And if you have someone that you can go to their farm and see what the residual is and have them explain what the decision they made, because this paddock has more and this paddock has less, what was going on at that time, they're going to know. And that's how you learn. It's through visiting people's farms and talking to them, and or even just pick up the phone and calling somebody, because there's lots of just it's supposed to be a time management tool too, right? And if you don't want to be killing yourself on this.
And I'll repeat just about the same thing you said, Riley. Like, we bale grazed for years, moving a wire every 3 days or every 5 days. And then you get that cow that gets in a habit of walking through the wire, or there's too much snow. And then all you're doing is chasing cows out of an area that you're going to graze, or you're going to bale graze that winter anyway. So the picture I actually showed to end the presentation was the cows out on our best grain land grazing our best quality feed. Well, they broke out into that during the cold weather. And if this was me 10 years ago, I would have spent every day in -40 chasing cows out of bale grazing. And, that didn't want to go because I wanted them to clean up marginal feed. And it's like, if you just let the cow be the cow, man, you're going to save some time and some energy. And I know we come from a point of, we have lots of winter forward. We're going to get through winter with lots of stockpiled grass. So we come at it from a point of a little bit of luxury that way. But as soon as we went from 3 days to 5 days to 2 weeks to 21 days, and now we're like 40 days, it's just, we don't start a tractor. We enjoy, like myself personally, we enjoy cows more because we don't have to see them every day, right? I go to check cows because it's an enjoyment of mine, and I want to see them out there being a cow. And it's crazy when you're not with them every day, because it's a pain in the ass. I have to get a 43-year-old tractor running in -40. I got to get it out there. I'm probably blowing a hydraulic hose, and I hate the cows. How dare you make me do this? But if you just let them do it on their own, they're just much more enjoyable animals. So that would be the biggest thing I would take away. Is I know it's tough to convince yourself that waste isn't waste, but it really isn't. And you guys have laid it out pretty clear, 10, 15 years later, just how much more benefits you're getting from the land perspective. You got anything to add, O?
Nope, I don't.
Cool. Well, this has been our best attended webinar yet, you guys. We lost 3 people, so excellent job. You guys all did great. We appreciate you coming on. To the guys, Jagger and Randy, you got hat and soap coming to you. But really appreciate the time, guys. Next week we got relay cropping into cereals. We're probably going to have a whole different webinar or webinar crowd, different audience. But yeah, you guys were awesome. And thanks for your time. And see you Friday, Stefan. Later, guys.